What if there was a world where I told you Dragon Link is not a bad deck? Hey guys, Otak here, back with another competitive Yu-Gi-Oh video, and today we're going to be talking about Maliss yet again. Except today we're going to be showing off more of my own personal build of Maliss and really like the thought behind it. I decided not to go with the cash build, even though that is what has recently topped at YCS Anaheim and a couple of other regional lists, mainly just because I don't have the cash cards, haven't got around to buying them, but I just realistically didn't end up liking the way it played. That being said, in my first Maliss video here on the channel, I talked about Maliss cash and you all called me crazy. Wouldn't you look at that? It's topping. Now, I'm also not going to be doing like an in-depth guide. If you want to see a more in-depth guide with Maliss and how to play around very specific hand traps, check out the video down in the comments below, this one right here. Just keep in mind that in the combo video, I do actually make 2 illegal plays, and I do fess up to it in the comments down below. However, with some mild altercations on what monsters are being used for link monsters, the combo still is very straightforward. So definitely check out the video and also, leave a like on it. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you my own personal build for the Maliss deck, D-Link Maliss. Alright, so here is the build, and this is the part where you all pause the video, and once again, don't watch the rest of the video, so, feel free to pause it. And I do want to start by saying that this is not my idea. I will not take credit for it. This is an idea that a buddy of mine had kind of passed on to me. I liked the idea, and I decided to integrate it and try it out, and I was a big fan with how the deck plays. The idea here is that the Chaos Dragons, Collapse Servant, and Wyver Buster are essentially just pseudo bestials that help you extend, but also helps you make the normal Maliss end board with a Hieratic Spheres on the end board as well. But let's real quick just dive into the deck here. We are running, I believe, 15 non-engine. We're running 3 Ash Blossom, 3 Droll and Lockbird, 3 Bestials, Ball Drake, Druid Worm, and Magnemite. You can run 2 Druid Worm instead of the Ball Drake. I like Ball Drake. He kind of bolsters the end board sometimes if you have him there, but he's not mandatory. Like I said, you can run 2 Druid Worm because Druid Worm plus IP is like just very strong. We are running the 3 Impulse and the 3 Imperm as well. People in several of my Maliss videos now have called me crazy for running Impulse because it shuts off Dotscaper. Obviously, Impulse will shut off Droll and Lockbird. It's fine. So many people are still running Impulse and Maliss. It's perfectly fine. It's just a matter of, first off, you have to activate Impulse from your hand to, of course, shut off those attributes, but at the same time, you just use those attributes first. But if you shut off Dotscaper, it's not like the end of the world. So at the end of the day, Impulse is still perfectly fine in this list, and also just a very, very powerful card. As for the actual main deck, we are running 1 Collapse Serpent, 2 Chaos Dragon Levianeer. I want to run 3 of this, I just don't own 3. This card's just crazy because if you open this in your opening hand, or you get Chaos Space and you already have like Wyver Buster in your hand, then you just banish 3 dark monsters at like the end of your turn or before you use Splash Mage, and then rip a card out of your opponent's hand. You can also like use Hieratic Spheres, summon Magnemite on your opponent's turn, Mag Search Levianeer on the end phase, so that way you have Crackback essentially. Because if it banishes a light and a dark, then it can pop 2 cards on the field. So it's kind of like a pseudo board breaker almost. Like I said, I want to run 3 of this because aside from Chaos Space, there's really no way of finding it. You could also run Mag. There's a very minute amount of ways to find this card in your deck. But overall, I want to run 3. I just don't have 3. Then, of course, we have the Dotscaper. I'm running EMP Meowmine rather than Code of Soul. I feel like running Code of Soul and IP are a bit redundant, but if you choose to run Code of Soul, it's fine. There were just some weird, like, clunky areas where Code of Soul just didn't matter because I had no viable Link 3 or higher Cyberse monster in the Escher deck on the end of my turn because, like, Transcode just doesn't do anything in your opponent's turn. Obviously, you can summon Firewall or Terahertz, but in a lot of the turns where I got Code of Soul to the graveyard, he didn't matter because I already went through those 2 bodies. People can say like, oh, well, Code of Soul can special summon itself from your hand if you control a Link monster. Well, so does Meowmine. Meowmine has more application with the fact that we are playing IP, but we're also playing SP, because then it can just, once again, bounce a card from your opponent's field to their hand. So it has more application, in my personal opinion. I like this card a lot. We are running the 1 Chessy Cat or Cheshire Cat. I think Chessy Cat's stupid. You can run 2. I don't think there's anything wrong with 2. I think between all 3 names, Chessy Cat is the more flexible of the names because it is not a 1-card starter as opposed to the other 2. This one is just like not as important. Now, of course, you do need the names. You do still need Cheshire Cat in rotation. It's just the third body. I choose to run 1, but every time I play test, I constantly bounce between 2 and 1, so it is really up to you. 3 Dormouse, this is obviously your one card starter. This is the important one. This is the one that you want to be playing. And this is the one you always kind of want to open with. Then we have 3 of the White Rabbit. We have 1 of the Wyver Buster. Wyver Buster plus a name is pretty much full combo because you will just like do Dormouse, go full Maliss combo, and then before you go Splash Mage, summon Wyver Buster, and then you have Hermetic Seals on your end board as well. We have 1 Allure of Darkness because Signet Mining doesn't always come up. So I try to only run 2 Signet Mining. Allure just like has some niche application in the deck. Obviously, you know, activate Allure, draw 2, and then banish name for your hand is full Maliss combo, of course. But overall, I just didn't find the need to run 3. So I run 2 Signet because Signet can find me a name that I'm actually looking for, whereas Allure can be a bit of a gamble. So I only run the 1 Allure of Darkness. Obviously, then it also plays in a Droll, and we still want to search our field spell on the Red Ransom, so we don't particularly want to play into Droll before we get the field spell. 1 Called by the Grave. This not only counters Ash Blossom and other hand traps like Droll and Lockbird that have very minimal interaction with our deck, but this is mainly used to fucking hopefully open and banish away the Lancia so we can play. Obviously, it's one of, we don't always see it, and we are, of course, addressing that in the side deck. But Called by the Grave, obviously, for the very little interaction of other hand traps with the deck. Ash Blossom can hurt the deck a little bit. Veiler hurts the deck a lot at a bad time, but we're seeing less Veiler and more Imperm these days. But overall, I think Called by is still necessary. Also, Called by in the mirror match just hoses it because they just like, if you just banish like the Dormouse from their graveyard before they can like use its effect, like that just kind of messes with a lot of stuff. You can just also banish like Red Ransom or something before they banish it from the graveyard. And then, yeah, like I said, the Called by kind of hoses the mirror match. 1 Chaos Space. Chaos Space plus any name is pretty much just like full combo. Chaos Space is nuts, plus it also gets the draw. I wish this card was at 3. I still to this day don't see the need to put it at 1. Obviously, like D-Link won Worlds that 1 year, and so they had to hit D-Link somehow, but I feel like Chaos Space can come back to 3, but this card is pretty crazy in this deck. 2 Signet Mining, like I said, it doesn't always come up. Sometimes you just don't need this card. Typically what I end up doing if I don't need this card, or we end up like having all the Maliss monsters, is we'll just search Meow Mind or Code of Soul if you choose to run Code of Soul. Overall, like sometimes there's just times where mining is just a dead card in your hand. You don't need it. So usually I'll try and save it until the following turn if we get that far. Gold Sark, self-explanatory, 1 card combo. You just banish away the Dormouse, Dormouse come back, Dormouse effect, yada yada yada. 3 of the field spell. This is kind of a Gold Sark. You don't typically want to open with field spell. Like you don't want to activate field spell as the first thing on your turn unless you have to. There are times where this is necessary to activate first because sometimes the deck does just brick. That's even said for like pure Maliss. Sometimes it just happens. We saw it a bunch at Anaheim. Sometimes the deck does just brick, but typically you don't want to be opening this like as the first card on your turn. But sometimes it's necessary, but you do need this card. Like you want to see this card. Then we have 2 talents, 2 thrust. Thrust is good in this deck, like really good main decking in this deck. There's not a lot of decks right now that can be like, yeah, Thrust in the main perfectly makes sense. Thrust is really cool because a lot of our interaction on our opponent's turn is just the normal traps, and they so it's like if your opponent stops you from getting to the traps, you can at least thrust to get one of them. But also Impulse is a normal trap, so like if you just feel like you need to have an Impulse in rotation, that's also really strong. It also just takes out 2 slots from the side deck. We're not hogging 2 slots on the side deck, or 3 if you choose to run 3 thrust for thrust. And then we are running 2 talents because it's just kind of, we're using it to punish people using hand traps on us. We are running 3 Imperm, but then we are running 4 of the traps. I decided to run 2 MTP. MTP is kind of like the best case scenario. So typically when you open like Dormouse or Rabbit, you want to have one of the traps in your hand, because Imperm sucks. Like if you just normal summon Dormouse and it gets Impermed and you don't have like other extension in your hand, you're just passing, which could possibly mean you just lose there. So typically what I like to do is if I open MTP plus like Dormouse, I set MTP, summon Dormouse, Dormouse effect, they go Imperm, banish the Dormouse with MTP, search out rabbit, and then off of the Dormouse we banish cat, cat come back, cat effect, banish the rabbit, and then we have all 3 names on the board, essentially. MTP, I just think, is like the better one of the 3 in terms of going first. You could make the argument to run 2 TB11, or you could just make the argument to not run more than one of these to begin with. I think 2 MTP is really good. It feels really good, and just like at the end of the day, opening it is not ever a bad thing. Like opening the 3 traps, as long as you have a name, is not bad. However, GWC is just dead if you don't open a way to get one of your names into the graveyard. Like, for example, like Signet Mining, discard 1, and then you normal summon Dormouse after you said GWC. But GWC is like probably the worst one to open out of the 3. As for the extra deck, I am only running 1 Deceive Worm. I'm not running the aggregator in the main deck. I'm putting it in the side. Reason being is I just wanted that extra deck slot. The dealing stuff do take away 2 slots in the extra deck that we could be using on other things, but also like aggregator doesn't always come up. Aggregator is usually just there for like the Ryzeal Ultimate Slayer target, and I'm running Ultimate Slayer on the side, so it makes no sense to run aggregator in the main all the time, whereas Deciverm can be used to counter very strong spell cards. Access Code Talker, because this is not only there to help you crack back, but also Access Code's essentially an extender in this deck. You make him banish like Red Ransom or White Binder from the graveyard, special them back, and then just like pop off from there. Very strong card. This card's cracked in this deck. Firewall Dragon, he's part of the mainline combo. However, there are just times that you don't need to make him the mainline combo. And you can just summon him on your opponent's turn, or you just like end on him and then GWC revive the White Binder, co-link with him, and like kind of play from there. There are applications where you don't use his bounce back effect on your turn, you can use it on your opponent's turn. Terahertz, this is kind of like the main end board piece. This is the guy you're constantly trying to build towards because he helps you get to the Deceive Worm in the grave. He helps you get the Meow Mine in the grave. Just overall, this is kind of like the end board piece. Haggard Lizardos, very strong because he banishes for cost, so even like imperming him doesn't fucking matter. We don't need his effect to resolve, we just need to pay the cost. We are running 1 Hieratic Seals because we would like to end on it if it is possible. The perks here is that we don't just need to see Collapse Serpent or the Wyver Buster. If we get enough Bestials in the opener, we can still make this. And then on top of that, like linking away the Bestials isn't like the end of the world because we can just put them back in our hand with the Firewall Dragon. There's been like several times in all of my testing where I've put like Magnemut plus Droll back into my hand because he just bounces monsters. So you can just like discard Droll off Signet or discard a hand trap or a vital piece with Signet and then Firewall put it back so that it's like you never really lost it. Then we're running 1 IP Masquerena. There's a lot of people arguing whether to use this or Code of Soul. It's really up to you. IP is a lot more flexible, especially with the next card we're going to be talking about. Whereas like Meow Mine, again, works with IP Masquerena. I just personally prefer this. If you choose not to run IP and you run Code of Soul, that is perfectly up to you. And then I'm running Nightmare Griffin. Nightmare Griffin is essentially just a win con against Ryzeal. Like if you just summon this in like the middle column because you have something pointing down to the middle column or something, this just kind of wins against Ryzeal if they don't have a way around it. There were, and I'm not running it anymore, but there were times where I would summon this plus like Transcode. Transcode's pointing at Griffin, so they can't even like imperm Griffin. They would have to open like Forbidden Droplet or something, which I think we'll see less play in a format surrounded around banishing. Griffin just kind of is a bully. You just summon him in the right spot, and sometimes your opponent just can't out him. Sometimes they just cannot get out of him. But if you summon this off of IP Masquerena, obviously he can't be destroyed by card effect. And then if you have like Ransom pointing at him, then obviously your opponent has their monsters attack and defense flip, so it's harder to swing over him. There's some like cool stuff with Griffin in this deck. And then since we're playing centrally link focused deck, we always have stuff getting linked, so it does not matter if he is directly pointing at him, whereas like other decks in the past that had Griffin, Griffin usually had to be pointing at them. 1 Decoder, this is part of the mainline combo, but also like you open a name plus a Bestial and the name gets imperm, then you can still summon Decoder and then Bestial away the name, so that way you get 3 bodies on the board and hopefully try and recover. Unfortunately, if you lose the Decoder that early in the combo, it does fuck with the combo a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. one of the three names, one of the Heart's Cryptor, Red Ransom, White Binder. You can argue like 2 of White Binder, which is arguably the best of the 3, simply because the Cashier Unicorn is running around in the format, and if you lose White Binder and Red Ransom from the Unicorn, you are kind of in for a wild ride. It's going to be very difficult to play the game from that point on. So you could argue running more than one copy of one of these. Next is SP Little Knight. Little Knight has some really cool interactions because you can, if you don't lock yourself with like Splash Mage, you can make Little Knight early, and then like banish away one of the monsters in your graveyard, especially if you're going first. Use her effect to banish away one of the monsters in your graveyard to then further make plays. But then Little Knight, of course, will be a part of the integral end board, which, you know, Little Knight, target White Binder plus a card on your opponent's board. That's just full combo. So like there's Little Knight just is really good, but also if you go IP and like link away herself and Druiswarm into the SP, that's 2 target banishes. Or sorry, that's just 2 removals essentially. Like just very powerful, something we've been doing for a while now. Splash Mage. This this is like the worst card in the deck. I hate this card so much. As many of you have mentioned in the comments in the in-depth guide to Maliss, I did make one misplay where I used Aloof plus a Maliss to make Splash Mage. Can't do that. He needs 2 Cybers. Thankfully, in that combo, I had 2 Maliss on the board, so I could have just not had used Aloof there. It's fine. It doesn't change how the end board turned out or how playing around Nib mattered. But Splash Mage, I hate this card so much, but he's so important for the deck because he just helps you extend further. You make him like mid-combo, so that way you can make a 3rd level or a 3rd Link 3. But the fact that he locks you into Cyburst means that like you have to do your D-Link combos early. But also, if you don't make Griffin, because like sometimes you can make Griffin before Splash Mage, and there's even some combos where you don't even have to use Splash Mage at all. And then the last card is Striker Dragon. This is just so we can, of course, instigate our D-Link plays. It's like a pseudo D-Link engine. Is like we're running 6 cards in the main. We're running 2 Levianeer, 1 Collapse Servant, 1 Vibrabuster, and 1 Chaos Space. It's actually 5 cards because we're not running the 3rd Levianeer, but if you chose to run the 3rd Levianeer, like, you know, more power to you. But the extra deck, like I said, we run Hrax, Spheres, and Striker Dragon, so it's like a mini D-Link combo, or a mini D-Link engine. But I'm only going to show off one combo that is like very like the ideal opener for what this end board would look like. So let's just jump on over to that. All right, so the only combo I'm going to show y'all is if we open Chaos Space plus Dormouse. Obviously, things can minutely change because Chaos Space is a one-of, so, you know, always opening it is super unlikely. Sometimes you open just the Wyverbuster, which is what you're normally searching off Chaos Space. Sometimes you open the Wyverbuster plus Chaos Space, which means you can search Levianeer. We are only just going with the 2-card combo, essentially. And if they like Ash Blossom Chaos Space, you know, we have 3 other cards in hand that hopefully help us. So it's not like the end of the world. We, of course, are just going to play this out as if our opponent doesn't have hand traps and we are going first. And also on top of that, we're not going to be trying to play around any specific hand traps in this exact example. I just want to show off what it is capable of if we open these 2 cards, you know, in the opening hand. Keep in mind your sequencing, of course, should change when you're playing a live duel because Nibiru is a threat, and this version of the combo, or like the combo I'm about to show you, plays into Nibiru heavily. But we're just going to start by going to the main phase. We're going to activate Chaos Space and send the Dormouse for cost. It does not discard, which is very unfortunate, but it does send for cost, and then we will be adding the Wyverbuster from deck to hand. We will then inherent summon by banishing the Dormouse from the deck to special summon the Wyverbuster, or sorry, not from the deck to the from the graveyard to the banish pile to summon the Wyverbuster, and then we will on summon or on resolution of summon use the Dormouse effect, pay the 3 for cost, and special her out. We will then use her effect, not on summon, is an ignition effect. We'll use her effect to banish out the White Rabbit, and then on resolution, White Rabbit effect, pay 3 for cost to special summon, and on summon, use her effect to set the TB11. Now, normally we'd make Haggard here, but we've already used both their banish effects, so it doesn't, you know, apply. So what we will instead do, and like I said, this heavily plays into Nibiru, so things should change based on the other cards in your hand, and also based on like what you think you're going against, if you think your opponent might have Nibiru. So we're going to link away the Wyverbuster. We're going to make the Striker Dragon Wyverbuster effect to add the Collapse Serpent from deck to hand. And then we will inherent summon by banishing the Wyverbuster to special summon the Collapse Serpent. And we will link away the Striker Dragon and the Collapse Serpent to make the Heavenly Spheres. Now, Spheres, he's just going to sit here for the rest of the turn. He's just chilling. This is pretty much just guaranteeing we end on Spheres, and the bounce is really strong, summoning Magnemut so we can get Levianeer, or just a Bestial, depending on what might be necessary, because we can like search for extension that way. It just really, is really up to you. But ending on Spheres, I think, is just really strong on top of our already prevalent Maliss end board. We wanted to summon it here, though, because, again, we don't, in this example, know what the other 3 cards in our hand are. So we know that at this point on, we're going to have to make Splash Mage. So that's exactly what we're going to do. But first, we're going to activate the Chaos Space, banishing it for cost, put the Wyvern Buster on bottom to draw a card. It's called by for this example, but it could be anything. But we will link away the Dormouse and the Rabbit to make Splash Mage. We will use Splash Mage's effect, bring back the Dormouse or the Rabbit, doesn't really matter here. Link those 2 away to make the red Ransom. Ransom effect, add the field spell to hand, and it's pretty much just, the normal Maliss combo from here. We will use the TB11, banish the Ransom for cost, special summon the Cat, Ransom on Resolution's effect, pay 900 for cost to special back, and banish the Dotscaper from the deck. We will then use Dotscaper's effect because it was banished to special summon itself from the banished pile. And then we will link away the Cheshire Cat to make the Link Decoder. That way we still can get a body. The combo is a little mucked up because of the fact that we don't know what the other 3 cards in our hand are. But just keep in mind, there are times where you do open Chaos Space plus like Dormouse, and you don't have to make Splash Mage so early. It's really just very dependent on when the last 3 cards in your hand are. But from here, we will link away the Decoder and the Ransom and the Dotscaper to make the White Binder. We'll go Binder effect, chain 1, target the Cat and the TB11, and then Decoder chain 2 to revive itself. Back to chain 1, banish the Cat and the Trap. On new Resolution, Cat effect, pay the 3 for cost to bring it back. And then from here, we will link away the Binder and the Decoder, banish it because it left the field to make the Firewall Dragon. We will then activate the field spell, banish the White Binder from the graveyard, Binder effect, pay another 900 for cost, and draw a card to special summon it. In this example, we end up drawing the GWC. This is the card that we would normally set off the Binder. Realistically, I should have activated this before linking it away, but it's fine. Because now, instead of setting the GWC, we'll use White Binder's effect to set the MTP. That way we have 2 traps in rotation. From here, we still haven't activated Cheshire Cat's effect. Again, we don't know what the other 3 cards in our hand are, so we might have another Maliss name in hand. But in this exact example, we don't. So we will use the Firewall Dragon's effect to put the White Rabbit back in our hand, and then we'll use Cheshire Cat, banish the White Rabbit, draw 2 more cards. At this point, we have 7 cards in our hand, and we've done all of this with only 2 of them, which is pretty crazy. We will then link away the White Binder and the Firewall Dragon and the Cat to make the Terahertz. You could make Hearts of Cryptor here. It's really up to you. I think Terahertz is just going to be better for this exact example, simply because we will use the Terahertz effect to send away the Deceive Worm. And that's really where that ends, because we don't know what the other 3 cards in our hand are. But we're sitting on 7 cards in hand, and we did all that with only 2 cards. So that's pretty crazy in my opinion. Just opening Chaos Space plus Dormouse produces this end board, and we have 7 cards in hand, 3 of which are unknown in this example, is pretty crazy. If our opponent tried to hand trap us at any point and just was unsuccessful for whatever reason, we have Thrust to be able to set another one of the traps, or just set Impulse. We possibly have a Bestial in hand. We already have the GWC in hand, so we were able to set the MTP off of the White Binder. And then on top of that, we have a Spell and Trap Mitigate. The GWC will revive the White Binder so that we can get other plays onto the board. Like, there's just a lot here. Plus, again, the Spheres will also bounce a card. Now, let's real quick talk about the pros and cons. Like I said, the pros here is like the Chaos Dragons do essentially treat themselves as like pseudo bestials. Obviously, you can only use them on your turn. They are inherent summons since they are chaos monsters essentially, so they are not activated effects to banish, which is really good. And on top of that, they are just like extra bodies. You don't always have to go into seals. You can just go into other stuff with the free bodies. The issue is, and this is a con to this pro, is that they can be bricks. And I will just straight up admit that. There are hands sometimes where I just open like 4 hand traps and one of the Chaos Dragons. Can't do nothing with that. So sometimes there are just like passes. Now, thankfully in testing, I haven't been punished like that yet, and I'll open like 4 hand traps and one of the Chaos Dragons, and then I just hand trap my opponent, and then I'm drawing into engine. So thankfully that happens, but there are just going to be hands where you just can't play. Now, the funny thing here is that's just the case with Maliss in general. I don't think the main deck engine is quite big enough yet, and we don't have any like 1-card starters per se. So there are just times where that'll happen. Another one of the pros is, once again, on the Chaos Dragon, Levianeer, for example, is just like a unit of himself. He's a 3k body that you're gonna summon pretty easily, and if you summon on your opponent's turn, you can almost guarantee you're going to win the game at that point, because he's gonna pop 2 cards, and if you summon it, if you just open him on your opening turn, he will rip a card. The problem with the Levianeer is that for the most part, it's just if you see it, you see it. You can almost guarantee if you open Chaos Space or one of the Chaos Dragons that you will see him on the next turn for the crackback, because you'll use the Chaos Dragon summon Seals, and then use Seals on your opponent's turn to summon Mag search Levianeer. So there are like some application there. You can also just use Seals to summon out like Swarm if you end on IP. So there's like cool stuff there. But like Levianeer, if you open them, you just get a hand rip, and that's why I want to run 3, is simply because you kind of want to open him. Some people are like, oh, well, you've already expended all your Maliss monsters effects in the banish pile. That's fine. It's just more stuff to send back with Hearts of Cryptor. It's fine. But again, like I said, the Chaos Dragons can be bricks. Chaos Space is just an extra draw on top of the already many draws that we get. If you open Wyver Buster plus the Chaos Space, then you can just search Levianeer. The only main issue, and this is a big issue I've run across in testing quite a bit, is that if you open Collapse Serpent, it is feel bad. There are hands that I've opened Collapse Serpent, and I just end up banishing the Firewall. I find a way to not use Splash Mage, and then I banish the Firewall from the graveyard, and then, you know, still end on Seals. It is possible. It's just a matter of navigating through it and depending on what your opponent has to like maybe stop you from getting that far, if anything. But like other than that, the cons are really just the same cons that like Maliss normally has. I've already kind of mildly touched on this before. The dragons, if you're not piloting it correctly, can play harder into Nib, or sometimes you just have to play into Nib. It happens. You kind of have to put your opponent on the just have it moment, or you better have it moment. But other than that, like, it is pretty much just the same pros and cons as Maliss, with a couple of other issues, but also a couple other good things. So that's all I really got for you guys. Like I said, this is going to be what I'm playing, at least for most of this format, unless I decide that I find something better or something I like to play more. But other than that, let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Don't forget to leave a like on this video, but also subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 2K before the end of the year, which is like 14 days away. But other than that, I'll see you all in the next video. See ya.